Well, I'm Jerry Rush, creator of what is known as the Rush Collection. Well, I suppose it really goes back to my youth when I was interested in motorsport and bought motoring magazines, and I collected all those, still have those in the collection. Rather than take a lot of things, I used to have to empty out estates and take things to the dump. I used to collect the brass and copper items, which you can actually see in the collection, and that's why it's not referred to as a museum. It's a collection of all sorts of things. But then in the early 70s became involved with putting Manfield where it is, and of course met a lot of interesting people. Did a very small amount of motor racing for about a 3-year period. I was involved with George Begg in the early 70s. Him and I were both, in fact including David Oxton, we were the Race Advisory Council for New Zealand Motorsport. And I saw George building a car. In fact, it was one of the cars I always admired and thought one day I'd like to own it. But it was 2008 when I eventually bought that particular car off of Graham Brayshaw, who had restored it in Auckland. I saw it at Pukekohe and thought, what a great car. But when I got that one, I thought, well, why don't I get the cars made by New Zealanders, like a McLaren and a McRae, and maybe an Amon. So I thought, let's start this, and we went ahead and found ourselves a McLaren and of course a McRae and some very, very significant cars. And then we've added a Lola and a Cooper and a couple of more Brabhams to it. So yeah, it's just my passion for cars.
It's been an interesting road to where I am now, and also to be part of what we have here called the Rush Collection, which is a collection of everything from coffee makers to race cars to Morris Miners, which is where my interest in cars started back in about 1990, I believe. Dad, as I say, has been in motorsport for many years, decided that he wanted to buy a Formula 5000, which was the Begg FM4, which is currently behind me. Ever since then it's grown and kind of got a bit carried away with what we were originally trying to do, but it was just a collection of cars and interest for our own self. But once people realised what we had, they wanted to come and have a look, and it's been a fun road. I will admit some of them don't get started every year just due to time restraints, but we try and get them out as much as we can. The fire engine in there, people think it's a static display, but last year we took it through to Wanganui, put it on display, drove it around Wanganui for the 150th celebrations of the Wanganui Fire Brigade. We like to be able to show what we've got with people so they can get an interest in motoring and keep classic cars alive in our country so young ones can see them.
That's an interesting part that I think the clubs that get invited to here, or they make appointments to attend to here, they enjoy it because there are different aspects where women might go over and look at the home kitchen area or the crockery area or the brass area. Then you have model collectors that could spend an hour wandering through the 3,000 models that are over there. And then there's, of course, I've got private collections of models that have been donated to us. Then you might have a person interested in aeroplanes, and the 108 models aeroplanes that are out there, I can't name one of them, but I've seen gentlemen sit on the floor in front of the cabinet for hours naming every aeroplane. So there's that. Then there's the engineering equipment that's around, like the aeroplane engines and the other engines that are here. I think the oldest engine we've got is a 1906 All Days and Onions engine sitting on there. But a lot of that stuff's been donated to us, where people get sick of it lying in their shed and no one can see it. So they know there's a nice shed here for it, and we're going to look after it, and my son will carry on looking after it after me. So, you know, it's been worthwhile putting together.
In New Zealand, there are a lot of cars in people's garages that are not shown to the public. No one can see them, and it's people only see them either by old photos or so forth. With what we've got here, we're trying to show people what we've got. We don't, people say, oh, you own them and so forth. No, we don't own them, we're just guardians of them. And, there has become a point when my father passes on, at that point I will look after them until I can then pass them on to somebody else or as a collection itself. The Begg, well, it started out as a quick tidy up so we could go racing in it, and with work I've been a little bit busy, so it's probably got about 3 weeks work in it, and we'll have it back ready to go and for the season. as I say, our engine builder will come up and he'll just finalise the motor for us, do tappets, those sorts of things. And yeah, we've done the mass of it, so yeah, we'll have it going hopefully for the MG Classic meeting in November.
But the little Cooper we've got is an interesting car. It's the first single-seater that Bruce McLaren drove. It's not owned by him, it was owned by Len Gilbert at the time, and a very, very historic car in New Zealand motorsport. Well, unfortunately in motor racing, there's always going to be an accident. Sadly enough, in 2015, my son was involved in a very large accident at Hampton Downs with this particular car, the McLaren, and it wasn't his fault, it was just the circumstances and the position he was in, the wrong place, wrong time, and the poor gentleman that was following him, he had no way of stopping, so it all sort of became quite a messy thing to happen. But then you bring them home and cry for a little while and ask the wife for some more money to repair them, and it does cost a lot of money to repair these old things. You have to make parts. The rims that I'm sitting on are brand new, they had to be made because we had 3 of them broken. You can't go down to the warehouse and buy McLaren rims anymore. So there's these sorts of things you have, and you always have problems with magnesium and that sort of stuff, because you've got to remember they're getting to 50 years old, some of these cars. So they decay, the parts do on them, and you're always at them. You've always got to keep them up to scratch.
I'm not qualified at anything other than a welder. I'm a qualified welder, and everything that I've got, I've learnt by watching and picking up and doing myself. Dad's very, very good at cleaning, polishing. He loves everything clean and tidy and shiny, which, yeah, our workshop is cleaned more often than I think most people's houses. It's quite funny. Maintenance-wise, we do as much as we can in-house. We have an engine builder downtown who does all our major work, but rebuilding gearboxes, front suspension, rear suspension, those sorts of things we do ourselves. A few years back we had a pretty big crash at Hampton Downs when I was taken out by 2 other cars, and we did, yeah, I'd say 80% of the work ourselves here in the shop. We've got, yeah, all the so-called need tools that we've got, and yeah, we get away with pretty much everything we need.
Well, of course we intend to add to it. It's a thing that's evolving. You've got to pass cars away or sell them and that. And we've sold several cars lately, and in actual fact we have one of the race cars for sale. We're trying to sell that so we can buy something else different. There's always opportunities to buy New Zealand history. The other thing, of course, is a lot of people do donate stuff to us in respect to motorsport history. Of course, they have nowhere for it, and often you find there's piles of magazines or the history of motorsport that they've got somewhere. And of course, if they don't, children are not interested in it, I won't let anyone dump anything like that. Some people say it's hoarding, but I make it available for people to see and read or whatever they like to do. So yes, there are 1 or 2 race cars that I do get offered, but I have to sell something to make room and to get the finances to do it. Being a trust in the future, that could be an easier access to money or anything like that. But yeah, it's evolving. Well, people hear about it and by word of mouth, and oddly enough, it's amazing how it gets through. And of course, magazines come in and write stories on individual cars, and they refer to them as being in the Rush collection. And so people ring up and make an appointment. It's got to be done by ringing or emailing, and make an appointment to suit us, because I don't want it to control our lives. We want to have it here. And we go away with the cars and take them to shows and things like that. So we don't want to be sitting here 7 days a week hoping that someone's going to come and have a look. We know how many we're going to get on what day they come, and so that's the way we control it. And we always had the kettle on for a cup of tea or coffee, so you know, you're most welcome when you do come through.